Okie dokie. I think seems to slow down joining. Mike, is that okay to get cracking?
Yep, go for it, Liam.
Awesome. Okay, prynawn da, diolch a croeso. Liam dwi, troi'n dilynydd rhwng gweithio gyda CDPS. My name's Liam and I'm an interaction designer here at CDPS. Dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg, ond mae angen I mi ymarfer. I'm learning Welsh, but I should probably practice a little bit more before I attempt it in front of an audience of people. But there we go. There's only one way to learn, and that's just to do it, right? So anyway, croeso, welcome to the first in our Lunch and Learn series, all about service mapping. So before we go any further, a little bit of general housekeeping. Recording this session, so it'll be made available on our YouTube playlist. So obviously, if you don't want your faces on screen or anything, just pop your cameras off. But feel free to keep cameras on if you would like. Also, if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, it's always nice to hear from people and know who's here and what you're doing, what your interest on service mapping is, and maybe I don't know what you had for lunch, something like that. Up to you. Okie dokie. So yes, welcome to the first in our series, all about service mapping. So I'm here to introduce the series because this is an area very close to my design-shaped heart. I'm also working with my squad here at CDPS, Big Up Yellow Squad, on a project exploring the area of service mapping and how patterns could be used to reduce duplication of effort and improve consistency in service design. Overall, service mapping is a really crucial step in the digital transformation process. It helps to ensure the service meets the needs of users, but also the needs of the organization. So through the series, we've got some really good guest speakers, some great case studies from 3 different organizations. Before we introduce today's speaker, just in case you're not familiar with CDPS, it's a little bit about what we do. We partner with Welsh organisations to deliver public services that work for everyone. So we do this through our 4 services. So we have Meet the Digital Service Standard for Wales, which is guidance for the public sector to meet the digital service standard. Learn digital skills, training courses for teams and leaders. We have Design and Improve Digital Public Services, which is how we support people to design services that meet the needs of users. And we have Connect with Other Digital Professionals, which are our community to practice and leadership events. We bring together people to meet regularly, share knowledge and experience, co-design, discuss ideas, and form networks, and lots of other things, which is also how I know Dan. Okay, so I did mention the Digital Service Standard a second ago. Just in case you're not familiar, this is like a whistle-stop tour of CDPS for you. In case you're not familiar with it, the standard shows what good public services look like in Wales and how to achieve them. It's grouped into 3 areas. So we have meeting user needs, creating good digital teams, and using the right technology. Obviously, there's lots more information about all of this stuff on our website and lots of examples and guidance to help people designing services. And of course, if I've got anything to say about it, lots more about service mapping to come to. With that said, I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker today, Dan Obi from DHCW.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Liam. Shemai, hello, everyone. Hopefully now I should have control of the presentation. So hopefully you can see the next slide. Give us a nod or a thumbs up if you can. I'm sure you can see the next slide there. So, okay. Excellent, thank you. So really excited today to be here, just to be one of a couple of us in the series, more about that later, who will be talking about sort of service mapping, blueprints, what have you. There's a lot of different names that this sort of stuff goes by, but today we're looking at service mapping, and in particular how this service designer has looked at service mapping. So that's why I kind of named it today's talk, helping find a way. So my name's Dan. I'm a senior service designer at the M365 Centre of Excellence for DHCW, which is part of NHS Wales. So really happy to be here today. So I always try to start with some sort of definition or some sort of guidance as to the topic or area of discussion on a particular talk or piece of work. And so what is a service map? So I looked up on GDS's website to see what they have around it, and obviously they had a blog post around it. And what I liked about the blog post, so I sort of put a visual here so you can go and dig it out. They give a sort of introduction, mapping and understanding a user's whole problem is fundamental part of making sure you build the right services for users, which obviously is very important. But what I also found very important that they go on to say is there's no one definition of what a map is. In service design, in my area, maps usually include a reference to users or people, and they tell a story. And I think that last bit there is sort of really my jumping off point here. I think for me, any sort of visual mapping or blueprinting that I do is to really back up a story that is grounded in evidence and understanding of users' needs. But more about that in just a second. So ways of working within DHCW and within the team that I sort of working and when I'm leading as a service designer on projects. So our ways of working, we use cross-functional teams within the Centre of Excellence using agile methodology, and sort of the A team, the Avengers, you know, insert popular culture reference here, usually consists of a project manager, user researcher, a service designer like myself, you know, and then many, many more. You know, I think the beauty of our team is, like, I think we're quite holistic. It then includes developers and you know, programmers and low code creators as well. So we really have, you know, kind of gun to tape user-centered design delivery teams at DHCW. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about a cross-functional team and our ways of working. So anyway, I was brought here today to talk about mapping and service maps and stuff like that. And so very quickly, I think you will understand that my theme is about there's no particular correct way or a certain recipe that you should follow when it comes to mapping. But what I've come to learn over my career and being, you know, mentored by service design team leaders and other things like that is your maps and your mapping should provide you with confidence and understanding in the problem space or in the solution space, right? So what I'm going to talk you through today is just running through a few projects that have actually just come to fruition, just gone live. You might have even heard about one or two of them in, you know, local Welsh press and so on. And this is a little sort of background into how we've approached delivering it and the role that service maps played. So what we're looking at here is actually the service map for what has gone on to become the dental access portal in Wales. So this is a project where there is now a centralized method for punters in Wales to get on a list to get access to an NHS dentist for routine dental care. And so now this has been nationalized and centralized. And so one of the things that we started looking at is obviously, well, what might the future of this service look like? And in this case, I elected to use a service blueprint method because what I liked about it at the time is it actually illustrated physical evidence or physical touch points. And again, more about real world versus digital in a moment. But when I started designing the dental access portal early on, I wanted to really understand all the steps and all the touch points, not only for the patient, but for dentists, and then the health boards, and then the health board administrators, and then even perhaps us as DHCW, what support processes, you can see that bottom strata there, like the support processes that we would have to provide that would underpin this, right? So the first thing I'd say is I think service maps, blueprints, you know, call them what you will. It's really important to identify touch points of a service. And again, use a version or a visual or a method that really backs up your confidence or your evidence of a situation. So moving on, still within the Dental Access Portal project, very quickly it became apparent that one area we would have to design for is this area known as assisted digital. Now, I can see everyone in the meeting, so I'd love by a show of hands. Who knows what assisted digital means in a public sector context? Raise your digital hand, so hit the raise hand icon if you've heard of it before. One, Will, yes. Monica, of course, Monica, I know you're a gangster, of course you'd know. Rachel, yes, Rachel, good to see you, Rachel. Oh, yes, Joe pops up. Good. So, you know, I can see, yeah, you know, a couple of hands. You know, I've got to admit, it's something that over the last couple of years, it's like, oh yes, of course, this is a almost a sub-discipline of user-centered design within its own rights. Now, to keep it moving here, why I show this particular visual is I found it very important, especially when explaining to non-digital folks. So this visual here is not necessarily for developers, coders, low-code developers, but this was actually more for health boards and health board admins to understand that there may be a group of people, and I really hammered it home with the iconography and the semiotics that I used in this video. I've got what we called Auntie Jenny or Granny Jenny, we called her here, and you can see that she might want to get onto the dental access portal waiting list via the phone. How would that work for you as a health board admin? Somebody's going to have to receive that call. Someone's going to have to data enter what Jenny is saying to you into the phone. Jenny might be, even want to come in person. What does that look like? Yes, she actually gets up, comes into, some sort of sanctioned building, again, interfaces with a health board most likely, and they input the data, or could even be by post. The system does allow for post. So again, the reason I show this particular visual here is, I would argue this is still a service map, but it's a subsection of a broader service map, but it's also about the purpose. And why I created this one was to really communicate clearly what was happening and to make sure that everyone was really confident in what this step entailed. So this is the assisted digital visual here. The other thing I really wanted to quickly touch on here is, for me, mapping, service mapping, sub mapping of parts of a service and so on, again, can come in really so many different guises. And as a service designer, what I mean by that is different audiences that you work with. You remember right at the top of this presentation I talked about working in a cross-functional team. Well, sometimes one of those cross-functional members will be like, yo, Dan, yeah, can you give us a blow-by-blow, step-by-step decision tree for what happens with this piece of technology, please, and what happens in each outcome of a decision? Right, okay, yeah, no problem. And so again, this is where a different kind of composition, a different kind of writing, a different kind of mapping comes to the fore. So this is actually a snapshot of that same process to register to get onto that, as I'm talking about earlier, this dental access portal, this waiting list for routine dental healthcare in Wales. This is actually the step-by-step process, including decision trees and including error messages and what to do in certain data situations. And this is all derived from the mapping that you've seen in earlier iterations, and what you're not privy to is some journey designs that we did and how we mapped out the actual pages. But rest assured, they all come together to be able to give enough detail. And again, it's about being confident in what you're producing for the right audience. So in this case, developers want a certain level of technical detail, if you like. So just moving on to the second project I was going to really use for this sort of talk here is the Dental Access Portal was one project, getting people in Wales access to NHS routine dental healthcare. Another project we were looking at is getting student nurses, and we're starting with student nurses as a proof of concept, or in fact a sort of beta, private beta, public beta, student nurses who come through the university system and at some point they matriculate into placements in NHS wards and healthcare settings and so on. And obviously at that point they come onto the sort of health board or NHS Wales IT system, which allows them to access different tools to do their job. So in this, what you're looking at here is this is the as-is map for student nurses who are sort of learning at university, and then they come onto placement. Now, I've written here, you really got to be confident in what is actually happening, and this is again the purpose, or one of the main purposes of service mapping or as-is process mapping, is just to be really confident as a design team, as a user-centered design team, as a service design team, what is actually happening and what the problems you're trying to fix here. So, were we able to zoom in, or, you might be able to zoom in a little bit here, is in red, the red strips we've captured the pain points. And from memory, I believe the first one is, oh, well, it's really difficult to audit because this process map actually shows the fact that there were recycled temporary logins for student nurses, so it's very hard to know what nurse was where at what time. The one at the top I know is after 31 days the account would expire and you need to rely on a registered nurse there at the bottom to set you up with a new one. So this is a different kind of service sort of map using swim lanes, but also working very closely with the stakeholders and users to put this together, which allows me to segue very nicely into the next slide, which is stakeholder input is key because they can spot what should be happening. Now, as we went on to design, the 2B maps, one area we looked at is what happens when a student nurse gets terminated. Now, the reason I include this map here is the big red arrow that you can see sort of in the bottom third there was actually caught by a stakeholder who said, well, actually, when a registered nurse terminates a student or suspends a student, there needs to be a method that it's recounted back up to the university. So what we did there is we put a really stark symbol there, but also I use this as an example of how co-design is very important. Just coming into the home straight here, again, just ways of working. I just want to really iterate and reiterate to my colleagues on this call who are listening, who work in the public sector and are designing solutions or alphas or services or products, and you're using mapping or service maps or blueprints to do your job. Just understand that there are many ways of working. I'll never forget when I started as a service designer, several years ago now, and I came to my first mapping session. I was like, well, Johnny over there uses swim lanes, but Sally over there uses something else. And I was in a real bind, getting all tied up in knots about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. But over my career, I've come to realize it's just what allows you, what artifact allows you to speak confidently about what you know about the problem or the solution at hand, right? It's very, very important to understand. We work in creative industries, and creative industries are actually quite a subjective industry. That's why they always have in service designers' job description, you have to challenge the status quo, right? Look out for that if you're ever becoming a service designer. Anyway, this last slide here talks about there are many ways of working. So find one that builds confidence and understanding. As UCD professionals or service design professionals or designer of digital, or even, and again, offline as well, I talked about assisted digital, anyone who's designing a product or service, just find what works for you. Find what helps you communicate your design or your understanding of the problem better. So, as ever, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Dioch. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys, my peers and contemporaries. So hopefully we should be bang on time. Someone's already firing up a hand. If there's any questions with my talk, service mapping, helping find the way, I'm ready to take questions. But Liam.
Awesome, diolch, Dan. Okay, yeah, we've got a question from Will.
Hey Dan, how you doing? I was wondering if you could maybe give me a bit of an idea of when you know to stop. Like, what's the level of detail that you kind of consider enough? I'm working on a project at the moment that's very complicated. It's all basically 2B stuff, and there's almost this endless amount of possibilities that you could map. So yeah, interested to get your take there.
Oh, totally. I think this is a fantastic question because I wrestle with this a lot. Is what level of detail is enough, right? And I've got enough, let me put it more sympathetically, I'm long in the tooth enough to have seen designers or researchers create a Miro board and then get lost in like swim lanes and columns and post-it notes on post-it notes with questions and comments, and then someone else from outside the project rocks up and goes, okay, but what does this all tell us? and you're not able to answer that question. So you remember what I was saying earlier on in the presentation, it's about confidence and understanding. And I think direct answer to your question, Will, is when you feel 100% confident that, I can't remember who said this, there's a podcast who said this, like, if someone, after you were to do your service map, Will, right, you go, right, this is what it is, right, you go to bed, right, and someone runs in, slaps you across the face and holds a gun to your head and said, what is the main pain point from your service map, right? I mean, it's when you can't audit it, right? If you give the same answer then as you do when you're not under pressure in the office, you have the right level of detail.
Okay.
Right.
That's a pretty memorable way of putting it. I like that. Yeah.
Glad to help. That's what I'm here for. Thank you very much.
Cool.
But in all seriousness, yeah, you know, and also, you know, a slightly less glib response is, also, it does depend on the audience you're performing to. Now, what I've again learned recently, especially with the Dental Access Portal, is some developers, and there's always two types of developer, in my opinion. Type 1 is, oh, write it on the back of a fag packet and I'll code it. I know what you mean, right? Type 2 is, if I don't see every comma and full stop in a 40-page brief explaining what the interaction should be, page by page. And so it depends on your audience, Will, as well. There is that level of, someone might require slightly more detail, others can grasp it at a sort of more macro or supra level. So it's just about confidence and understanding. Anyway, that's my answer there.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Has anyone got any other questions for Dan? Thanks, Will. I think like that thing you said was really important, Dan, around, well, actually a lot of this was obviously around choosing the right methods, right? And I think further than that, it's like hacking the right methods as well, isn't it? Sometimes you can start off with a method, but then kind of like changing it to be what you don't have to stick to the thing that you've seen and, you know, use the bits 100%. Of it that you need, like a magpie. Okay, sorry, we've got another question.
Melissa.
Hello. Yeah, I was just wondering if it's possible to share some of the service maps as an example. That would be super helpful if you could.
Oh, do you know what? I guess my job is taxpayer funded, so as long as my bosses are happy with it, I'm sure I should be able to turn over elements. I mean, to be fair, I think hopefully we should be able to turn over. Well, we know this presentation is going to be public domain, so of course we'll look at to see what we can do. But actually, maybe even with a UCD or service design hat on, is like, actually, what is that solving for you in asking that question? Is it a case of you want to see different examples, or you've got a problem in front of you and you're looking for a way to solve it? Can you tell me a bit more about your request?
Yeah, where I am, we're largely sort of doing UX on the website kind of stuff. I'd like us to be doing more CX, and I think this sort of service mapping is a sort of way in for us to show where the touch points are across all our interactions. So I'm really interested in examples that I could probably steal, basically.
Well,
learn
look,
from it anyway.
No, and do you know what? Listen, and I think, you know, this is a super, you know, looking at the time here, I think this is a super segue, Melissa, into like, if anyone wants to get in contact with me, you can get in contact with me. There's, I think, a new Wales digital Slack channel. Liam and Mike, I think I'm correct in thinking about that. But more importantly, there's the CDPS communities of practice, which I see, Melissa, your email talks about City of London.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm sure, I'm joking. But you know, I'm sure that you know, we would love to have you, and maybe even if it's a meeting or two that we have, Melissa, online to maybe help. You know, because we're public sector, baby. This is just what I think is really important. Yeah. You know, we're all in similar boats. So please do join one of our communities, and Melissa, please do reach out to me. But obviously, we will look to share what we can.
Oh, fab! Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, just to echo Dan as well, I'm always more than happy to talk about any area of design, because I'm very sad and I like talking about patterns and mapping and all that stuff all the time. So please feel free to reach out to me as well. Okay, if there's no other questions then, Mike, shall I hand over to you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Liam, and thanks again, Dan. Yeah, so I'm just going to wrap things up here. I'm Mike, Communications Manager at CDPS, and what we'd really like to do is, hoping you feel inspired and taking some actionable sort of insights back to start mapping your own public service. But we'd really be interested in your feedback. So we've just got a quick Menti here. Really helps us just to shape these sessions going forward. But does this lunch and learn make sense to you? Have you learned something new today? And what's your main kind of key takeaways? So if you could go on to the Menti there, Elise, my colleague, has popped some links into the chat to take you directly there, or you can scan the QR code. We would be really, really helpful if you could do that for us. And just to let you know that, as Liam said, this session is being recorded. So if you have had to dip out early, or you've got some colleagues who would be super interested in taking a look at this, then yeah, you can watch it back in your own time on our YouTube playlist. So we have a Lunch and Learn dedicated channel for all our Lunch and Learns that have been taking place since we started these. We had some sessions last year, which kind of what does good look like sessions with the National Library for Wales, Link Cymru, Welsh Revenue Authority that you can catch up on as well. But Dan's will be there hopefully in the next 24 hours up on that channel. And what's coming next? So yeah, I think we've actually got a couple of people in the room who are going to be part of our sessions coming for us. I think Linda and Kay from Wrexham Council are in the room. But coming up on the 17th of March, this will be 2 weeks' time, we've got Leigh McDade, John Oliver and Linda James from Pobl Group. And they'll be sharing their approach to reviewing and redesigning their repair service. So this session will explore how business process mapping and user research are shaping future service design. So yeah, please come along if you want to sort of look at the key challenges that they've looking to uncover, lessons learned. Then please join us there. That's actually going to be taking place during UK Services Week, which is an annual event which we are supporting, which is hosted by the government, UK government digital and data community. So bringing together professionals from across the UK. So yeah, if you're not already aware of UK Services Week, yeah, please look it up and get involved in UK Services Week. But that will be happening during UK Services Week. The next session after that will be on the 31st of March. So we're going to be joined by Kay O'Flaherty, Head of Service Digital Customer Services, and Rob Griffiths, Digital Services Team Leader at Wrexham County Borough Council. And they are going to be talking about the digital transformation of the council housing application process. So if you haven't already signed up to those sessions, please, we'd love you to join us. And that will be happening on the 31st of March. And then Liam is going to be wrapping things up on the 7th of April, just before Easter holds, to sort of show how service patterns can help when designing services. So Liam will be able to fill you in with a bit more of a preview detail on that. But that session isn't on our website yet, but it will be coming soon. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. But Liam, I will hand back to you to wrap up.
Cool. Awesome. So diolch yn fawr pawb. Thank you so much everyone for coming. Hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time. Dan, thank you so much. You are awesome as always. Catch you all soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, Dan.
Bye.
Cheers, Liam.